In Chapter 259, Ege finally reveals why Sukuna never used his fire technique during his fight with Gojo, and it's something we were not expecting to hear. Over the past few months, there have been crazy theories about why Sukuna never used his fire arrow or other fire techniques on Gojo. One prevalent theory was that Sukuna's fire technique was exclusive to Yuji's vessel. This was speculated due to the belief that fire was Yuji's black box, and since Sukuna was in Megumi's body, he had no access to these abilities. However, we can now definitively debunk these theories. It turns out that Sukuna always had the ability to unleash the fire arrow or even his divine flames in any vessel he occupies. We now finally have the answer to why Sukuna never used his fire arrow or divine flames. The narrator of the manga explains that during Gojo and Sukuna's fight, Sukuna repeatedly had to change the specifications of his domain, narrowing its effective range, due to which Sukuna deemed it insufficient to unleash Kamino. Therefore, Sukuna had to seal it during his fight with Gojo. Now that was a mouthful of words, so let's break it down into a more simplified version so we can understand it very well. From what we have read, Sukuna had to change the condition of his domain and reduce its effective range, making it more narrow. Sukuna's domain is an open barrier, so its guaranteed hit effect can be expanded to a radius of 200 meters. However, due to Gojo's infinite void shifting its size and state, Sukuna could not expand his effective range. We know that Gojo shifted his infinite void states many times and also shifted the size of his domain. Sukuna had no option but to shift his domain in order for it not to collapse. In order to expand his effective range, his domain must be stable and not constantly shifting. Since it was constantly moving, he had to narrow the effective range of his malevolent shrine. That is why he chose not to use the fire arrow or divine flame. This is because the divine flames are said to already have a narrow effective range compared to the cleave and dismantle, and unleashing them with the malevolent shrine in a constantly shifting state will mean that the divine flames won't have much effect on Gojo. Bear in mind that the malevolent shrine constantly shifting means it won't have the ability to broaden its effective range. If the malevolent shrine were stable, its effective range would have been broadened, allowing the divine flames, which is already said to have a narrow effective range, to expand due to the condition of the domain. Remember, when the sure hit effect of a domain is active, the curse technique must conform to the domain's rules. For example, when Sukuna fought Gojo, his domain expansion sure hit effect was broadened, allowing his cleave and dismantle to flood the whole domain. Since Gojo's domain was stable, Sukuna did not have to stress about changing his malevolent shrine conditions, allowing him to go all out on his sure hit effect and expand its range. This means that the curse technique he used, cleave and dismantle, had its effective range expanded, allowing it to hit Gojo from every angle. Unlike cleave and dismantle, the divine flame is already narrow ranged, so technically, it won't have much effect unless the malevolent shrine's effective range is broadened. The divine flames is also said to be much slower than other fire techniques, so that's why Sukuna chose to use a binding vow, and he unleashed it in Chapter 259 against Chozo and everyone else. The question is, if Sukuna's domain was stable and the effective range was expanded, would Gojo survive the divine flames if it were unleashed? The answer is yes and no. Firstly, if Gojo's domain were active, he would have infinity, so even if Sukuna unleashed the divine flames, which is said to be the most powerful fire technique and the very fire technique that destroyed Maharaga in one strike, Gojo would dodge the divine flame easily. Remember, infinity can easily negate curse techniques, so no matter what you throw at it, divine flames won't even be able to reach Gojo, and that is only if Gojo's domain is still active. The reason why it won't be able to reach Gojo's domain when it's active is that when Gojo's domain is active, his sure hit effect is active, meaning Sukuna's sure hit effect will be nullified. Both Sukuna and Gojo's CT clashing will cause a cancellation to happen between both of their energies. Since cursed energy is negative, two negatives create a positive atmosphere, meaning both sides will not be affected by their attacks. So if Sukuna decides to use the fire arrow or divine flames, Gojo's sure hit effect will nullify the attack and cancel Sukuna's attack, and vice versa for Sukuna. When Gojo's domain is active, his infinity will also be active. Here's where things go crazy. Suppose Sukuna's domain overpowers Gojo's domain, which we see happen in Chapter 227. In that case, Gojo's domain will collapse, and this very event led to Gojo's sure hit effect being switched off, and therefore, his infinity had no option but to stop working. That's why Sukuna's slashes hit Gojo from all angles. The malevolent shrine creates a separate space infused with Sukuna's cursed technique, allowing it to be amplified and strengthened within the domain. Gojo's sure hit effect switched off means Sukuna's sure hit effect will 100% hit Gojo, no dodging it. That means if Gojo uses infinity to slow down the slashes, Sukuna's DE itself will override the impact of infinity to ensure that his attack lands. So, infinity cannot negate the sure hit effect of Sukuna's malevolent shrine due to the domain's rule. That's why Gojo was cut and injured during the final part of the clash. Gojo only got hit by the slashes after his domain was broken, so technically he is safe from Sukuna's sure hit effect until the infinite void has collapsed. Infinity still works within a domain as long as it is functioning. Collapsed domain means his infinity has no choice but to be inactive. When Gojo's domain collapsed, Sukuna could have unleashed the divine flames and killed Gojo. However, one thing we know is that Gojo has one of the strongest strongest RCT in the verse after Shoko, Hakari, and Sukuna, so technically, he would have been burned into crisps. But thanks to his RCT, he could heal his body with speed. The intriguing aspect is that if Sukuna were to use Divine Flames, it would undoubtedly have a profound impact on Sukuna. This impact could manifest through Mahoraga. We are aware that Sukuna summoned Mahoraga long before Sukuna and Gojo opened their domains. Mahoraga, of course, knows that Sukuna's CT is the Cleave and Dismantle. However, the Fire Arrow or the Fire Technique in general is not Sukuna's CT. Therefore, it's plausible that Mahoraga's adaptation to Unlimited Void could be thrown into confusion by Sukuna's release of the Divine Flames, potentially leading to Mahoraga's adaptation processes being halted. Sukuna's main goal was for Mahoraga to adapt to UV, though it makes sense why he avoided using other techniques unrelated to his CT throughout the whole clash of the domains. Other than that, we know that Gojo could have easily survived the Divine Flames with his Infinity, no question about that, but without the Infinity, it is 100% certain that Gojo would have been affected in some way, and that's probably been burned to death or burned with major scars and injury. Still, with Shoko's help, those burns may be healed. It depends. One thing we know is that Divine Flames is nowhere as powerful as World-Cutting Slash, but the Divine Flames are far more powerful than the Cleave and Dismantle. The fact that it destroyed Mahoraga in one strike shows how insanely powerful it is. Of course, World-Cutting Slash takes the lead as the strongest technique in Sukuna's arsenal, but Divine Flames will have to come second place because it's no joke.